All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Innovative Leadership Speaker Series, and welcome to so many of you to your residency weekend. I know many of you are nearing the end of your program, so I hope we're feeling the collective sigh and excitement and just gratitude for getting to be in the same room with each other for a couple more classes. I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker. Paul Sinanian started his career with Robert Bosch in Anderson, South Carolina as a manufacturing and development engineer. He's been with BMW Manufacturing now for 25 plus years in a variety of roles, including vehicle analysis, functionality evaluation, and new vehicle launch validation. His most recent role as department manager of the talent programs and training for the BMW Manufacturing allows him to align his technical background with his passion for personal development. Paul has a BS in mechanical engineering and an MBA from Clemson University and a BA both in accounting and manufacturing from Furman. He is a strong supporter of continuing education, personal development, innovation, and culture growth, which aligns to his strategic position in talent development. Paul is also a member of our executive board here at the MBA program. And I have to brag on Paul for a hot second too. If you see a beautiful new building on the BMW campus, Paul has his fingerprints, footprints, handprints all over that building. So Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
So thank you, Jamie, and greetings to everybody. I'm excited to be here to be part of this, and I appreciate Jamie giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys. I'm excited for you, especially those of you that are at the end of the program. This is where it becomes really fun. Jamie gave me a little bit of my background. One thing I want to emphasize in my background, I got my MBA early in my career when I was at Bosch and Anderson. As a young engineer, I was looking to try to figure out what pieces I needed in order to continue to build the foundation for a strong career. And at the time, an MBA seemed like the next best thing for me instead of going back to get a technical degree. And I got a lot of pushback from people. And it's one of the things I want to talk about today. I got a lot of pushback from people that said, why are you getting an MBA? Everybody's got an MBA, and I remember really as a young engineer having a kind of a snarky response and said, "Well, do you?" And of course he didn't. So I said it kills your argument there. But I'm a strong supporter of getting the MBA, and one of the points I want to talk about with you guys today is why do people get MBAs? Why did you get an MBA? What is it going to do for you? And really to keep you in the frame of mind of what the most important thing you should walk away with this extra piece of your toolkit that you have for your professional career. So today what I want to talk about is, first I want to talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about what are the challenges that we have in the workforce right now for development. And specifically, I want to touch on emotional intelligence. I want to talk on culture. I want to talk on coaching. And then the final thing I really want to put a plug in, as Jamie mentioned in my bio, I'm a strong proponent for continuing education. And everybody asked me, why? Why do you think that's necessary? Why can't we just use our experience? And I want to give you a little bit of a background of why I think that's important. So let's start right out and let me talk about what an MBA is. But in order to do that, let me talk first about what an MBA isn't. An MBA isn't magical. An MBA isn't you walk through the door and you're cross over the threshold and automatically you're an instant leader. Automatically you're an instant person that is going to solve every problem in an organization. It also isn't something, and I see this a lot in our organization, it isn't something that automatically promotes you. It isn't something that you look at and say, okay, I have an MBA, so I deserve this. It's another tool in your toolbox. And I've had several discussions the past 6 months, and part of my talent development and training programs that I'm responsible for, I'm sitting on several boards throughout the state, workforce development boards, economic development boards, And we had one just a few weeks ago, and I'll tell you, it was really interesting because it was about how does South Carolina, especially the technical colleges, prepare for EV vehicles? How do we prepare for the electrification, the workforce needs in the electrification field? And after about 10 minutes of listening to people talk about how we needed to get stronger in this area and stronger in this area, I finally raised my hand and said, guys, I think you're off base. I think first you need manufacturing, and that's the foundation. But what people continually ask me is, tell me what majors you're looking for. Tell me what curriculum we need to change in order to make this work. Tell me what's got to change. And I always say the same thing. I look at them and say, guys, I need problem solvers. Industry needs problem solvers. They can come from any major, they can come from anywhere in the country, they can come from anywhere in the college, they can come from any college. If they can solve problems, they are a good fit for the organization. So my message back to you guys about what your MBA is doing for you, again, it's not magical. It's another tool in your toolbox to give you situations that have allowed you now to see different perspectives on different types of problems. And I know the curriculum that you guys are going through, and I know the 3 different areas. When I went through this curriculum several years ago, we didn't have those defined paths. So I think the development of these defined paths for data analytics and entrepreneurship gives you the opportunity to experience within those defined paths different types of situations that are real world situations that we deal with in industry. And I reinforce that with any of the deans or any of the professors that I talk to that want to know about what really the curriculum we need you to understand as you come into the workforce. And I keep coming back to problem solving, but I also keep reinforcing that in my theory, as an undergrad, you learn what tools are. You learn what the tools you need are. You learn how to use the tools. You learn how many different types of tools you really need. Anybody that's ever worked on something knows if you have the right tool, it's the right way. But a good problem solver will also look at it and say, if you don't have the right tool, you're going to find something to make it work. I worked on my car too much in college with the wrong tools, and it takes twice as long to do something when you have the wrong tools. So part of what I see the MBA is not just developing the answer, but sometimes you already have the answer. Now you have to do something with it. So the answer really is not the end of the problem. Solving the problem is actually taking that answer and putting it into some sort of initiative, some sort of direction, some sort of defined path in order to actually accomplish the goal that you actually set out to actually solve. So not just handing a number to your boss and saying, okay, I've got this, now what do we do? It's, okay, I've got this, here's what I would do. I ask my team members, don't give me just the one answer that I'm asking for. Give me 3 different answers. I want an answer that gives me exactly what I'm asking for, but I want you to think as well in parallel paths of maybe you give me an answer at 80% that gives me something that is not as much as I wanted, but I can get it done quicker. I can get it done with less money. I can get it done with less manpower, and it'll get us moving. And on the flip side, 120% solution that says, how about we do this? It might cost a little more money. It might take a little more manpower. It might need some equipment. It might take a little longer to get in, but look at how much more we can get out of it if we just stay the course and actually put that in place. This is the kind of problem solving that you guys in this program are going to be able to do. And I think you have to think this way in order to make this education valuable for you. You have to then translate the skills that you have into tangible outcomes, not just say, I've got an answer, give it to somebody and let them tell you what to do with it. And the biggest thing is, if you can make that normal and you can make that comfortable to operate with that style of work, it's going to make you very valuable to any team, anywhere you go. And one of the things that I talk about with my fellow managers, and we have a large organization here at BMW, we're 12,000 people here. Management team is about 350 people at different levels. And one of the things that I told them in one meeting is, I think that if you're an effective leader, you should be able to do any job in this room. You should be able to step into any role and succeed. And they scoffed at me a little bit. And I said, well, let me qualify that. I think if you're a good leader, you're not the one solving all the problems. You're the one leading the problem solvers. So how do you ensure that you can connect with the problem solvers and look at the big picture? How can you ensure that you will take a look at every problem as its own little project, and then take the skills that you guys are learning in the classroom right now and actually apply them so that every problem, no matter what it's about, no matter if it's assembling a car, no matter if it's painting a car, no matter if it's working on a problem at a supplier, they're all just problems. Don't get overwhelmed by the fact that it's a problem that might be in some area that you're not used to. It's just another problem. And if I can get you to understand that as you walk out of this program, you have the skills to be able to look at any problem and just break it down systematically and just into its simplest pieces, and then break it down to a process, you guys will have the most valuable tool for your toolbox that you can ever imagine. People come into our manufacturing facility, and it's a very nice facility. If you haven't been here, I'd love to give you a tour. And they get really overwhelmed by the manufacturing aspect of it. It's a beautiful plant. It has a lot going on, especially in our body shop that has over 450 robots in just one small area. But in its simplest form, it's about welding. It's about picking up a piece. It's about moving it to the next process. And it's just about doing things step by step. And I think that overwhelming aspect of looking at that problem, if you're able to break it down into its simplistic terms, you're able to achieve something that a lot of people can't do. A lot of people can't look at something and then figure out exactly where to start. And I think you guys are walking out with the tools to be able to do that. So when people come to me and say, why should I go get an MBA? What I tell them is, I'm not telling you to get an MBA. I'm telling you to re-educate yourself. What you need to look at is the curriculum. Does it bring you the tools and close skill gaps that you are missing? And if that's the case, go get an MBA. If you want to go get a technical degree, go get a technical degree. What I'm telling you about an MBA is I think it's the most transferable set of curriculum that you can put in place that can adapt to any situation. Okay? So how do we want to do this, Jamie? You want me to continue talking or ask questions, or?
Yeah, we can open it up. If you have questions, you can either type them in the chat or use the raise your hand function and unmute yourself. So do we have any questions so far? All right, we'll move along.
We'll keep going.
The raised hand function. Not Mr. Mayor, this is Brian Franklin. I work with Yokohama Industries Americas, Paul.
Yep.
We're an automotive supplier over in Easley, South Carolina. Do a lot of underhood components. So you mentioned the fact that this is more of the plant tour invite you gave. How do I reach out to you to get that opportunity for myself and maybe a plant manager there?
I'll give all my information directly to Jamie, and she can distribute it. And you guys feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, that'd be super.
Let's talk about workforce development now. This is the hot topic. And at this point now, everybody's looking at me as the talent pipeline owner and the training person to develop the entire workforce for all these new technologies. And my first thought was, oh boy, we're dealing with high attrition because our workforce is now at the point where the people that started this plant are now retiring. We're dealing with a talent pipeline that has a different understanding and a different set of values and a different set of expectations than the two generations that came before them. And throw on top of that, you're dealing with a different level of technology that people are now requiring in order to take the jobs that are necessary to keep the plant running. So the technical needs of the organization, everybody came to me and said, what do we do? And they were panicking, and how do we get everybody up to speed? And I turned it around and said, guys, I'm not so much worried about the technical development. I tell my team members and anybody I interview that developing a person comes in 3 different sections. It is a technical development, it is a professional development, and it is a personal development. So I look at those 3 different categories differently. And when I tell people that I think the technical development is the easiest of the 3 to develop, they think I'm crazy. They think that I'm crazy that I can develop high voltage technology training pretty easily. And when I give them my argument, it is, okay, guys, we have a training class. Electricity is the same here in the United States as it is in Europe, as it is around the world. So you don't have to adapt it to cultures. You don't have to adapt it to different things that are going on in the world in different locations. It's physics. So I continue to push the point that I think the technical training, while it can be difficult to get people that understand it to be able to train people, is probably the easiest of the 3. Where I'm focusing now is professional development and personal development. And what I would tell you guys is what's coming in the industry, what's coming in the world. Where is the focus going? Well, the focus is going on emotional intelligence. The focus is going on coaching. The focus is going on culture. How do you actually address these 3 aspects of your team members, your organization, your overall work environment? Because you've got the challenge of people wanting to work from home. You've got the challenge of people that have cultural issues in the workforce that don't align with where they came from. We have a lot of expats here, and also we've got new generations and new streams of people coming in that we haven't had to really integrate before, and we haven't done a good job with that. And a lot of companies are dealing with the same thing. Emotional intelligence is one of the hot topics right now for personal development, because we're getting away from the hierarchical approach to management, and really I try as much as possible to take a few words out of my vocabulary. Management is one of them. And I'm replacing management with leadership. Management is a direction of tasks. It's giving a clear set of assignments, and it's managing those tasks. Leadership is providing the direction and providing the tools in order to achieve that direction without having to be involved. I came into this role 3 years ago, and I came from the engineering team, and I didn't know anything about training. I didn't know anything about talent programs. I came in and put processes in place, and I said, guys, I don't care about targets. I care about 2 things. I care about people, and I care about processes. If you take care of people and you do the right processes, targets will take care of themselves. But at the end of the day, my job is not in 2023. My job is in 2025, 26, and 27. My job is to set this organization up for success in 3-day basis right now, then we're always going to be behind and never going to be able to catch up. So my role here over the past 3 years was to set up my team for success, to enable them, to empower them, to give them the power to make decisions without having to ask. Because I always tell them, there's no decision that you're going to make that is going to shut our assembly line down, which is the most important thing that we have here to make sure that we pay attention to, is that time is the one thing you could never get back. So if the assembly line shuts down and we get a car off the assembly line every 60 seconds. And imagine how much the value of a car is, and a minute of downtime costs the value of 1 car. So I said, guys, our job doesn't shut that line down. So there's nothing you're going to do that will actually impact the performance of this organization if you make the wrong decision. If you make the wrong decision, then we'll look at it, we'll figure out why, we'll figure out what we can do to make the right decision, then put that in place. But everything is a learning experience. And I think one of the things you have to try to eliminate is fear. Fear of making a mistake. We have 140 co-ops every semester now. So in my orientation speech, what I tell them is the one thing I want them to do is fail. I want them to make mistakes. I want them to actually push themselves such that they're not working in a safe environment. Now, I said, you have to learn from those mistakes. You have to make sure that you have the skills to be able to evaluate what the impact of those mistakes are, how you got there, but that also is part of putting another tool in your toolbox. So part of what we're really focused on in EQ and in culture is how do you provide that safe space that people don't become afraid to actually explore. And I tell my co-ops and interns in that experiential learning time frame, this is exactly what I expect you to do. Even in your professional career, though, I don't expect people to succeed all the time, because to me, if you're not doing that, if you're not failing, you're not trying. And in order to get ahead, you've got to use the tools that are in your toolbox. So coming back to you as an MBA graduate, you're going to have tools as you walk out of here, for those that are graduating, hopefully in the next few weeks, and you're going to put them in your toolbox. And if you don't dust them off occasionally and actually use them, you're going to forget how much leverage that tool can give you. And I would say with emotional intelligence, it's where a lot of people don't recognize how valuable it is to be highly emotionally intelligent, and how much you can actually advance your skills and your performance by being that person that people want to have on their team, to be able to actually work with people, to solve issues with colleagues. And every person is their own individual project. I like to think about it that way. They've got their own strengths, they've got their own weaknesses, they've got their own hot buttons, they've got their own leverage points. And if you figure out exactly how to integrate your work style with theirs, it becomes extremely valuable. It's not about escalating when somebody doesn't do something. It's about going back to them and saying, okay, how can we get this done? And people come to me all the time and say, what about a strong mentoring program? We need mentoring, we need mentoring. And mentoring is another word that I'm trying to remove from my vocabulary, because I think mentoring isn't what people associate with mentoring definition. Mentoring is giving you my experience and telling you what I've done and what you should do based on my experience, or what you could do based on my experience with that exact situation. Coaching is actually giving you the tools to get there yourself. Coaching is what I consider more valuable, because I think it doesn't give you the answer, it gives you the ability to get the answer yourself. And I think it's a lot more valuable to a person to be a good coach. The problem is coaching is more difficult. The problem is coaching isn't that easy to be able to do well, especially for people who just want to give you a quick answer. Coaching takes time, coaching takes effort, coaching takes practice. And I really am trying to push this in the organization. The problem in an organization, though, guys, is everybody wants a quick return on investment, and coaching is a long-term investment. Coaching is something that you just can't say, look, I did this, look how good they are 6 months later. Mentoring could be, but I think mentoring, and those of you that are big mentor fans, forgive me for kind of bashing mentoring a little bit. I just don't see it as powerful as everybody thinks it is. Now, what really is powerful is if you can combine mentoring and coaching together. But at the end of the day, I think that coaching would overtake it anyway in a situation. And all of these come together, and you know, coaching and emotional intelligence, again, the focus on personal and professional development, all these come together to me, the capstone of an organization, and that's its culture. And culture, I think, is driving everything now. Culture's, I think, the foundation of an organization, that if you lose your culture, you've lost your way. I'm a big vision, mission, and strategy person. I use this as one of the 4 things that I talk about whenever I talk about any initiative, any problem. The others being a process diagram, input, process, output, timing diagrams, now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and then of course a Gaussian distribution of where should you focus your effort, on the 0.2% on the high end and low end, or on the 99.8% of where most people sit, or most items sit. And I use those 4 diagrams to describe exactly how to develop a strategy, and more importantly, how to implement a strategy. People ask me what's harder, and I'm 100% convinced that it's harder to implement a strategy than come up with a strategy. I think anybody can come up with a strategy. That's just being creative. Getting people to believe in it, that's actually very difficult, and that's where you have to be clever. And I think that's where people turn it around, and they try to focus too much on, I need a good strategy to work. So they'll spend all their effort on developing a strategy instead of actually putting it in place and getting people to believe it and get behind them. And I think if you don't get behind them, it takes twice as amount of effort to get them back. But these are professional techniques. These are professionalism. These are how to actually translate a concept into a tangible solution. These are ways of doing work. But going back to culture, if the culture of your organization isn't such that people can freely think, people can be inspired, people can be innovative without fear and without the necessity to actually show a profit, a value of their free thinking time, then your culture will then fall apart. And there's so many aspects of culture. There's diversity. There is, talk about work-life balance. There's wellness. There's so many aspects of it that people take for granted that it's there. And if it's not felt, then it truly isn't there. Also, if it changes as senior management date changes, as a manager changes, as an organization gets added, as the organization grows, it's interesting because that will actually erode the culture to the point where you've got buildings built on a foundation that's crumbling. And it's not as easy to make culture work. You've got to actually put effort into it. There were a few years ago, I don't know how many people would remember this, but Toyota had a problem with their accelerator pedal, where it was accelerating on its own. And it was interesting because they made a technical decision that was actually the wrong decision. The head of Toyota came out, and his answer was very simple. He said, it was our culture that caused the problem. We got so big, and what we did is we forgot that our culture required us to do things this way, and we didn't pay attention to it. And that's what made the problem. It wasn't about that they did something wrong technically, they made a wrong decision. It was about the fact that the foundation of the way they ran business eroded. And that actually caused the problem, which I continue to think about anytime I think about culture, because that is an answer that is so mature and so professional, because it's exactly what happened. It wasn't a mistake that threw somebody under the bus. It was a mistake of the company culture. So, okay. I'll stop there for a second. Any questions on that?
Mayette, I'm going to throw it to you.
Hi, Paul. My name is Mayette Aldana. I am actually the program manager with Agile One in support of the direct contract at BMW. And I wanted to ask what your number one tip would be for balancing the emphasis on developing these softer skills, your emotional intelligence, professional development, etc., with the technical expertise that is so valued in manufacturing?
That's a very good question, Matt, and it's a very simple answer. Know yourself first. And I think you know our program here, leadership with the iLead program. So what we did is we developed a new leadership program about 4 years ago and rolled it out to the plant. Unlike other leadership programs, which I have described as great leadership programs that provided you tools to put in your toolbox, we developed a program that actually gave you the toolbox. Didn't give you the tools yet, but you had the toolbox, and that toolbox was you. And the first thing we found is that if you don't understand who you are, what your values are, how your emotional intelligence is, and how it interacts with other people, I can give you all the tools in the world, and you can't use them properly because you don't actually grip them properly with your hands. So the biggest piece of advice there would be, look in the mirror first. First, evaluate yourself, understand who you are, understand how your values are, understand how your interactions with your teammates, with your family, with everybody around you impact what decisions you make and how you make them. And we have found that as being extremely powerful in our organization to kind of recalibrate everybody, because the first thing people said when we introduced the program was, oh boy, here comes another flavor of the month. Just another program. We'll go and sit and watch this and then move on. And we really got impact from this program because they were learning about themselves. They were learning about their own emotional intelligence. They were learning how to coach. They were learning that, hey, I'm not very good at this, and here's why, and it's because of me. Make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I see another hand.
Brian, go ahead.
Thank you. So, Paul, you talked about, the work from home, I guess, initiative scenario that we're dealing with in society today. And certainly my company deals with the same thing when you're talking corporate individuals versus those that are maybe more plant specific, let's say. What is BMW's policy, if you have one, if you could share, or how are you managing that?
We so going back to 2020, we immediately instituted a business continuity policy where organizations, especially those organizations that had to continue keeping the plant running, separated themselves so that no one organization would be out if something catastrophic happened. Obviously, the challenges of being in a plant, in a manufacturing plant, is the people that are building the cars cannot work from home. So the first thing was to make sure that they were safe, and then to continue the business operations. We've always had a policy of mobile work, but we instituted a fixed policy at that time to make sure that we separated. You could either do it on site, or you could do it work from home and separate your teams. We never stopped coming in the office during that time frame. What we then moved forward with is when we got back to, I would say, normal, when COVID wasn't as big of an issue as it was in the very beginning, we went back and said, okay, let's bring everybody back, but we can still continue the mobile work policy if it makes sense. I mean, we have a mobile work policy that allows you to work from home, but what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to fix times where people worked from home, and we didn't want to actually separate the teams as more than we needed to. And I had this theory 3 years ago, and I'm telling you, somebody's going to come out with a study that the working from home separates a team. It reduces your innovation, it reduces collaboration. And I know it's very popular to be able to do that, and I think it's a tool, but I personally don't care for it because I think it doesn't build that team spirit, and that I think it is an eroder of culture. So we have actually gone back to bringing everybody back in the office, but still allowing on occasion, if you need to work from home, and that's okay. But not as I'm going to work from home every Thursday.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about innovation and teamwork and culture. All those things are difficult from home. So thanks for your answer.
Mhm. Any other questions?
Well, just a quick thing to add to, I love the aspect of knowing yourself first. Are you able to share, or, I mean, you don't have to share exactly what you're doing at BMW, but in terms of assessments for this group, to really look into on assessing, kind of knowing who they are?
We do several things. We use the DISC model. We use strengths finders. We also use the 360 assessment as well. We kind of use a combination of all of those to build the picture. And those are shared not with your entire team unless you want to. They're really for you, so they become quite powerful for you to actually see the picture of yourself. But the assessment, in order to build that picture of you, in our classes, it's the class design is 3 modules. It's 2 days per module, and then it's a 6-week break in between. And in between, we use a professional coach to work with you, and you go through the content, and it's really evaluating you and your leadership style, and it really tries to reinforce what you learned and tries to get you to evaluate with those tools. So an official tool, we do use them, but more it's the application of the content. And I can share the content with you as well, Jamie.
Beautiful. Thank you, Paul.
Mm-hmm. So last thing for me is continuing education. And it's really an interesting challenge. And Jamie mentioned that I'm lucky enough to be part of the executive board for this program. And in our last discussion, I think it was last week or the week before, we talked about micro certificates. We talked about what really curriculum should include, what really is the value of educating yourself, what really is the value of going through and giving yourself these more tools. It's never been a question for me. It becomes a question now because organizations are now challenging, are we giving enough for our teams? Are we giving too much for our teams? Are we giving the right tools for our teams? And my approach has always been, any education you can get will add value. And the whole question about micro certificates came up. And what we talked about is the micro certificates are just another tool. And I would go back to you guys and say that the MBA itself, the foundation of the program, it's the toolbox. The micro certificates are another set of tools, maybe a new set of wrenches, maybe a new set of power drills or something else. And it is the opportunity to explore in a very enclosed area a new technology and new set of tools to be able to do that. When I started talking about this internally, we had some really interesting discussions, because I think that as long as you allow people to explore, even if they explore outside of the area that's in their particular field, it can only add value. Because I think it opens up the opportunity to think in different perspectives. We had a discussion where I'm working on a program now that we can get a PhD through one of the universities in South Carolina. And it's a PhD in leadership. I've got the opportunity to actually get different fields involved from different schools and really build that partnership with them. And it's funny because especially our colleagues from the European side of the business are worried that, hey, if we educate everybody and then they leave, we're just throwing money out the window. And my message back to them is, well, what if we don't educate them and they stay? And they all looked at me and got mad at me for making fun of them. But I believe it. At the end of the day, if we don't actually allow people to educate themselves and really keep going, then I think your organization gets stagnant. And I think that stagnant level of the organization, you can't necessarily identify that easily until it's too late and then actually has a negative impact on the organization. So some of the programs that we started, even in our vocational area, is to give opportunities all the way down into 11th grade in high school to get people here on site, and then to build them through a series of defined steps up to an associate's degree, give them alternate paths to go get a bachelor's degree, and continue in multiple ways. So I'm a big proponent of continuing education, but I'm also a big proponent of making it easy for somebody to educate themselves. It's hard enough to do the work in class, but if you can make it easy for somebody just to get started and keep going, remove all those obstacles, I think you have a higher opportunity to keep them engaged and give them the opportunities to succeed. For professionals, I remember coming through and someone told me after I finished my bachelor's degree that the bachelor's degree was the new high school diploma. And I said, uh-oh, I better go get a master's degree. And then the master's degree was the new bachelor's degree. And all I remember was always feeling like, okay, do I have enough? And I would tell you guys, you can never have enough. You can always learn more, but I do think there's a point where you have to feel comfortable with your skill sets. But having these different perspectives, when I went back and got the 2 additional degrees, they gave me 2 more perspectives I didn't have before. And I don't think I'd be where I am today without that complete array of degrees that I have, just because each one of them did something different for the way I do work, the way I think, the way I behave, the way I lead. And I don't know if it's easy to give you a clear message to say this one did this, but as a package, they all work together. And all I would tell you is, if you get to the point where you can continue to educate yourself, and you think back and say, okay, I think I'm good, think again, and give yourself the opportunity to continue. Now, don't burn yourself out. You don't need to, have 18 degrees in order to be good. You have to feel comfortable. But I would also say it keeps your mind fresh, it keeps you going, and it keeps you ahead of the curve, in that you're always the person out there saying, okay, what about this? Did we think about this? It's just more tools. Okay, that's what I had today. I hope that that was helpful, and I will open the floor for questions.